No, Robert Kesakos is your usual suspect. Welcome back to yet another live broadcast on your favorite football updates channel. It's a pleasure to be back here with you on this beautiful Tuesday morning, the 3rd of February, 2026, 42 minutes past the hour of 9 a.m. We had started the live early on, and then I had to stop it because I realized my house wasn't in order. By that, I mean that there's something that I had not done. Anyways, for those of you that were part of our conversation last night, thank you so much for dedicating the time to be a part of that conversation. For all our new subscribers, I say welcome back to the community. Thank you for choosing to follow and subscribe to the Football Tribe UG community. I hope you enjoy your stay with us. I hope you get to enjoy what we do, that you continue to like what we do, that you continue to like, comment, share, be regular viewers, invite your people to invite your people to also be part of the forum, and so that we can continue to grow this wonderful community where we get to speak and talk about football and engage about some of your favorite clubs around the globe. A lot has been going on here in Uganda. There was a spat between the sports minister, that's the state minister for sport, who goes by the name Peter Ogwang, and the FUFA president, Engineer Moses Magogo, as the two presented budget statements before Parliament, with FUFA trying to be wiser than most, trying to present their own budget when they very well know it has to go through NCS, that's the National Council of Sport. Anyway, in the wake of that, you do have, on the other side, you have the FUFA president, Engineer Moses Magogo, who is moving around with a 28-page document that has some both good and audacious suggestions, some that are financially unrealistic in the context of our country, because perhaps selfishly so, and maybe because he is the head of football in the country, he only looks about at football. And yet, for an MP that he also doubles as from Budiope, he should be thinking also about other sporting disciplines if, the country is to grow in an all-inclusive direction. He makes some audacious, suggestions in there. For example, like the literally getting rid of institutional clubs or government-led entity clubs like Maroons, who are owned by the Ghana Prison Services, KCCA, Entebbe UPPC, that's Uganda Printing and Publishing Corporation, NEC. Then you do have players, teams like UPDF, Uganda Revenue Authority, and any other that falls therein. His suggestion, or he is of the view that those respective entities redirect their resources to community clubs. Now, by the virtue of financial starvation to those clubs means that you get rid of them. Basically, that's what it means, even though in his own submission or in clarification, he seems to suggest that they do not want to do away with those clubs. But now, if you starve them of funding, then they will cease to exist. And by the way, the idea of a community club is not that bad a thing, but community clubs aren't without their problems. They have their issues. And we have had a couple of here. Teams like Weza, people from Entebbe Road will know a thing or two about that. Teams like Onduparaka, teams like Arua Hill, those kinds of teams that are community-led or community-based clubs. They've been here before and they could not sustain it. Akitara is the recent example of that. Very, very wonderful team, very beautiful community. But I'm not saying we shouldn't do it. I'm saying it shouldn't be the crown jewelry, like the success to it is almost guaranteed. So anyways, that's part of what is ongoing. And I hope that at a particular point during the course of perhaps this week, I will get to host a more senior figure in regards to sporting journalism and people who follow, all those stories, to go down to that conversation and see whether we can dig much deeper into that kind of talk here in the country. But on today's episode, we'll be talking about the return of the EFL Cup. We know that Arsenal will be in action today against Chelsea in the second round or the second leg of the semi-finals of the English Football League Cup, also known as the Carabao Cup. But also, I wish to inform you that yesterday we did put out a video in which we talked about Lodri's comments in the aftermath of Manchester City's 2-all draw against Tottenham Hotspurs, for which Lodri sort of went out and lashed out, to the referee, to condemn his wanting performance on the day. And yeah, we try to dissect those comments. And my argument, or part of that argument, is that he who seeks equity must come with clean hands. And unfortunately, Lodri does not embody the clean hands. We seem to remember that came against Everton. I think it was in the 2023-2024 campaign when he handled the ball in the area and he escaped away with our punishment. Without conceding a penalty, and that was down to the poor officiation of the game. So while it worked in his favor then, he did not complain. And then in the very season, you did have Jeremy Doku's high boot on Alexis McAllister when Manchester City were playing Liverpool. While they got the advantage over that one, thanks to referee Michael Oliver, who seemed to dish out a lot of candy gifts in the form of poor decisions to Manchester City. He never critiqued that to say, yeah, Jeremy Doku is wrong here. That should have been a penalty. And then I also seem to remember two bad tackles from Mateo Kovacic against Declan Rice and Martin Odegaard when Arsenal played at the Etihad Stadium, which were deserving of a red card. Perhaps one of each being independently worthy of such a punishment, but eventually he escaped away with it all. And Lodri never came out to say, look here, I think the referee did poor here, but now he seems to think that there is an agenda against Manchester City, citing the consistency of poor decisions in the last three games. Now, we all know, for those of us that do follow a fair share of the Premier League and other, football elsewhere, we do know that bad decisions are synonymous with the game, just that sometimes they are more frequent or more pronounced. In this particular case, he seems to highlight that perhaps Diego Dalot should have received a red card in their 2-0 loss to Manchester United. He seems to suggest that Manchester City should have been awarded a penalty against Wolverhampton Wanderers, which I disagree with. I did seem to remember speaking about the Diego Dalot versus Jeremy Doku incident, to say it did look worse in replay than it was actually on first instant or in the first class. And I remember saying this, that had the referee been sent to the monitor to review that incident, I was almost 100% certain he was going to come back and dish a red card. Now, it wouldn't have been the most contentious or ugly decision because the nature of that tackle in itself was subjective. But where Diego Dalot is culpable is for playing with the high boot against Jeremy Doku, which saw him miss their subsequent fixture. I think that was at a game in the UEFA Champions League against Bordeaux Glimont. Now, then there's that situation. Then subsequent week, you had the situation regarding Omar Mamush and I think Mosquera of Wolverhampton Wanderers as they claimed a penalty for the ball brushing off of Mosquera's lower thigh before hitting his arm. That was in a natural position, but not that he had intended it to be as such. So he seems to suggest that should have been a penalty. Now, fast forward, he comes to the Tottenham Hotspur game where he argues, and rightly so, that the goal by Dominic Solanke should not have stood because Dominic Solanke fouls Mark Gehi in before scoring that goal. Now, whereas I do agree with him that there was a foul on his defender in Mark Gehi, and that if the roles were reversed, that would have been a penalty. The question then that perhaps VAR asked themselves, is it a clear and obvious error from the referee to allow this goal to stand? or is it just because he's not seen that pre-action very well? So whatever the rationale was, I also did not agree with the decision. At the time, Manchester City were leading the game by 2 goals to nil, and one would think that perhaps if, let's say, the goal is cancelled, maybe, just maybe, Man City go on to win the game. Anyways, guys, allow me put up um, a poll question for today. Who will advance to the Carabao Cup final? So that's our poll question for today. Will it be A, Arsenal, 2, Chelsea? That's the poll question for today. Do let me know what your views are on there. You said Dominic Solanke kicked Mark Gehi's leg from the behind. Gehi basically was forced to put it in his own net. The goal should have been disallowed. Exactly. That's the argument that I did make yesterday. That if the roles had been reversed, that Mark Gehi had committed that kind of foul on Dominic Solanke as he attempted to score, and then he doesn't score, then that incident would have been given as a penalty. But because the striker fouls the defender, then certainly the footballing world does not want us to scrutinize that decision or that element as much as as much as we would if the roles were reversed. So I am of the school of thought that that should have been a foul, but in part of Lodri's awards, he says that the referee is meant to be neutral. Should be neutral. In other words, he assumes or he wants the world to believe that the referee was not neutral on the day. I wouldn't want to think so because, like I've highlighted, whereas Tottenham Hotspurs did benefit from poor officiating decisions on the given day, Manchester City have not been immune to that. They equally have been part of that. They've also benefited from those kinds of decisions, as earlier on highlighted. So, unfortunately, and I've said this before, that it's very unfortunate that at every end of a match week, we end up more embroiled in more discussions about decisions by match officials that did not go right than the game sometimes itself. Now, this is not unique to the Premier League. When you go over in Spain, for those of you that follow a fair share of the Spanish La Liga, you will know that the AFA from Bradford, they equally have their own issues. Particularly, you say we play Albacete today in the Copa del Rey. I mean, that should be a winnable fixture for Barcelona. But the point I'm trying to make is that even when you go over to the Spanish La Liga, the decisions that have been made, and even Real Madrid themselves question them, Barcelona have raised their concerns in one way or the other. Then a lot of Spanish La Liga teams seem to think that the big boys of the Spanish La Liga get away with so much in terms of, what would pass for best officiating. If you were following events, and I wasn't watching the game particularly, but for those that were following just perhaps from updates, the events are from Real Madrid's victory against Rayo Vallecano over the weekend, in which they literally won it by 2 goals to 1. At the death of it, Real Madrid getting a penalty in the 100th minute. One would be wondering, why? What circumstances led to that penalty? And where is the genuineness in that? Because some people would try to make the argument that perhaps by that moment, maybe the game should have been called to an end. That in a way, that even the perhaps exaggerated stoppage time was to try and give Real Madrid the advantage. I usually say when there's a lot of minutes added in to be played, that the minutes added in are not to be played by one team. They are still to be played by both teams, unless you do have a red card, like Rayo Vallecano did have, of course, because they ended up with 2 red cards in that one. But anyways, so every league you go to, you'll find those kind of decisions. Whereas it's not very common, at least in my observation or experience with the UEFA Champions League. Once in a while, or every from time and again, you will get that kind of decision that is really, really questionable. Let me remind you, for the 2023-2024 campaign in the UEFA Champions League, I think at the quarter finals, when Bayern Munich knocked out Arsenal. You do remember an incident where Gabriel Magalhaes handles the ball. Literally, David Raya passes the ball to him to start play. That's the intention. You know, the intention is to, it's the same way you would sort of hand over the ball to, your teammate. So in this particular case, he sends it to him with the foot, and then Gabriel puts his hand to it, and then they start play. Now, Thomas Tuchel, I think, was the manager at Bayern Munich at the time, argued that that should have been a handball, and indeed it was. But the referee argued that it was a silly, I think, a silly a schoolboy mistake that he did not issue a penalty for it. But on any other given day, that could have been penalized. Now, what I appreciated about that for it, perhaps one would think or would say, yeah, we understand your relationship with Arsenal, so we understand the bit of bias there. But I say it without fear of contradiction whatsoever, that punishing that would have been very bad. Why? Because one, you have an honest mistake being made, but more importantly, what's the intention? You remember when the law is being applied, there's the letter of the law and then the spirit of the law. You get the point. So, in the spirit of the action itself, David Raya intended to hand over the ball to Gabriel Magalhaes for them to start play, because they start play usually with the defender passing it to the goalkeeper, and then they spread out and move on with play and build up their play. So the spirit of the action was honest and genuine. The action itself, in Gabriel putting his hand on the ball, was a wrong decision to make. So if the referee decided to exercise the letter of the law, he could have given a penalty against Arsenal. But because he read into the spirit of the action, and this is where the rule of common sense comes in, he decided not to award a penalty. So really, every sporting discipline, I've seen these things in lawn tennis. I've seen these things in basketball. I've seen these things in rugby. Everywhere where you have a sport being played and you have a presiding official in the form of a referee, there's always going to be something contentious, But in this particular case, my argument was Lodri does not come with clean hands. But anyways, for any of you that would want to watch that video, please go over to the channel under the video section. That video is there, already up and running. For those of you that have already watched it, thank you so much for dedicating the time to watch that video. So the headline reads as follows, that they do not want us to win. Lodri lashes out after Manchester City and Tottenham draw. So go over to the channel. It's only about 19 minutes. So gladly, please, I believe you can spare the time to watch that. So please go and watch it and let me know what your thoughts were done in the comment section. Anyways, let's quickly move on. Oh, I agree with Lodri. Yes, I also did agree with Lodri in his submission, but on the flip side, I also said, does he have the moral authority? Because in justice, they say, I'm not a lawyer, but I say this, that if you seek equity, you must come with clean hands. And the question was, does Lodri come to the table with clean hands, or equally his hands are stained? Because, it's the case of defending something bad when it's convenient for you. I don't know what example I could use, but I'll give you an example. If, let's say, um, okay, I don't know if you're old enough to drive, Pedri, but let's say you're driving and then you're stopped by a traffic official or a policeman, and let's say they want to give you um, a hundred €100 ticket for a traffic violation. It could be as minor as driving at 34 kilometers per hour in a 30, in a 30-kilometer zone. Now, it's a minor violation because you've not exceeded the speed limit that much with just, by just four. So instead of you getting booked on a ticket, I do not know what happens over there, but in African countries, it's very common for um, a police officer to ask for kintu kidogo, something small, and it's so disguised in a way that he will see that the traffic violation is so minor. If he wants to be a stickler to the rules, he'll give you a ticket for it, or he will simply say, buy me a bottle of water. So that in itself could sound innocent, that buy me a bottle of water. So one would defend that. But in our person, but you can't defend that because it is being convenient for you that in a way, the office is not being a stickler to the rules, so you get to avoid maybe $100 tickets. But if the rules are reversed, you can also, somebody else can justify it otherwise or defend it otherwise to say that was bribery, that you bribed a traffic officer into not giving you a ticket, So for Laundrie's case, in this particular case, it's to say that he himself has been on the other end of poor decisions for which he and his team have benefited. I also made the argument in that same game that Laundrie could have been sent off. And he knows for a fact he was already on a yellow card when he goes in with a ridiculous tackle against Conor Gallagher. And shortly after, he also fouls Wilson Odebat. So if the referee was being that big a stickler to the rules, Laundrie should have been sent off. But then again, it was convenient for him not to highlight that, So that's what I did argue. Can we play a football-related game / quiz? I'll take that under consideration, Pedri. I'll take that under consideration when it comes to quizzes. You're not the first person to suggest a quiz. But for now, I thought we should stick to these poll questions that I put up, and then our predictions game that is going on. But at some point, we'll find a way to incorporate that into the game. But again, or into the broadcast. But still, my thinking is that it will be the case of putting up a poll question as opposed to the way you'd have a school quiz. Anyways, so I'll leave it at that. So when it comes to overall officiating of the game, we know that so many things are wanting. I take a particular issue with the Premier League because oftentimes I see a lack of progress. I see a lack of deliberate action to improve. I see those gaps and I keep thinking to myself, look here, guys, you ought to do better than you are doing, that there is so many things that you can do right, or you can try be deliberate in your attempt to self-correct, and yet oftentimes it doesn't feel that way for me, that they are being deliberate in trying to self-correct. Anyways, I'm moving on with football. Today, there's plenty of action for you to follow up on. Yesterday, we did witness Sunderland beat up against Burnley by 3-0, which then means Pedri's perfect score was snatched away thanks to that goal by Chamsdine Talaubi in this 72nd minute of the game. Of course, Axel Tuanzebe had considered an own goal in the 9th minute, while Habib Diarra scored in the 32nd minute to make it 2-0 for Sunderland as they return to winning ways. The implications of that result on the Premier League table are such that Sunderland have now moved, I think, 8th, on the Premier League log with 36 points following that game, while Burnley stay in 19th place with only 15 points. Still, I mean, 11 points. They is it 11? Yeah, they are 11 points off the relegation place against a 17th place at Nottingham Forest. I could say without fear of contradiction, by a miracle, Wolverhampton Wanderers and um, Wolverhampton Wanderers and Burnley um, Wolverhampton Wanderers and Burnley will certainly get relegated this season. West Ham, I don't know. I still feel something for West Ham, and I said this somewhere along the way this season that it wouldn't sit well with me if West Ham got relegated. They've been fairly a decent side. We're talking about a side that just recently, I think in 2023, won the Conference League. And because they decided David Moyes' football was boring, they wanted to go smart and get a Julian Lopetegui. And ever since then, they've never been the same team. You know, they've never had it right. And they've gone on to they've rid themselves of some of their best players over the years. Declan Rice going to Arsenal. Lucas Paqueta has since left for Flamengo. There was an attempt to apparently with Liverpool being interested in Aaron Wan-Bissaka. But anyway, that one stayed. But when you look at their squad, it's not the worst squad, but it's also not the best squad. However, it's not too bad a squad to avoid relegation. Unfortunately for them, these things have not happened consistently this time. It wouldn't be the first time if they got relegated. No, it wouldn't. But it will be a little bit painful. I must say, I feel for West Ham. So, but yeah, if things continue taking on the trajectory with which they are going, then be rest assured that it won't be long. It won't be long that they get relegated as well. Let's hope it doesn't come to that. Anyways, and then of course, with that wrapped up, I don't know if Pedri is still with us. We can then have a whole review of our own predictions from match day 2024. Pedri, if you're still with us, do let me know. I think, let me see. I think I got this one wrong because I'd gone for a 2-2 draw. I got the Manchester City game wrong. I'd gone for Manchester City to win by 2-1. They drew 2-2. I'd gone for Nottingham Forest to beat up against Crystal Palace by 2-0. It was a 1-1 draw. So I do not get any points out of those three games. I wanted for Man United to win by 2-1. They won by 3-2. So I have 2 points on there. I went for Aston Villa to beat up against Brentford. They lost to Brentford by 0-0. Thanks to Dango Ouattara score there. So I get no point there. So from Sunday and Monday, I only have 2 points. Jesus Christ, how poor a performance that is. But as far as Saturday goes, Liverpool to beat up against Newcastle. I'd gone for a 2-1 victory for Liverpool. So Liverpool won by 4-1. So I get 2 points off there. That's 4. Chelsea to beat up against Chelsea. Guys, there's an account attempted login on a device that I need to either deny or confirm and allow me make a phone call during this broadcast because it's a security matter on somebody's email. Let me see if we can get this out of the way. But yes, Chelsea won their game by 3-2 against West Ham United. Hello, is it you trying to log into your email? Yes. Okay. What number do you have on your screen? Apologies, guys. Apologies. I'm trying to help somebody access their email. But like I was saying, Chelsea won their game by 3 goals to 2. I think my prediction for that had been a 3-1 victory. So, hello, what number is on your screen? Pardon? Okay, I've approved. Okay. Apologies on that. That's done. You know those Gmail security questions that you have to go through for the purposes of your own security and privacy. So I just needed to help somebody go through with that. But anyways, so my prediction had been a 3-1 victory for Chelsea. So I do not get a perfect score prediction for that, but I do get 2 points on there. So that makes it 6 points. Are you calling that? Are you calling the referee? No, Pedri. As helping somebody log into their email because on one of the secondary devices, I got a notification that there was a login attempt, and Jesus Christ, I keep getting them. Apologies. Hello. Yes. What? Okay. So, like I was saying, as just helping somebody log into their email, there's that security question they ask. Are you sure you're the one trying to log in an email? Especially if you have your email logged in on another device and then you're trying to log into a new device. So they send notifications on the other device where your email is logged into, where they believe you're the, exact person, and you go through that. So that's what I was helping with. And then they send you a couple of digits and things like that. Anyways, so it wasn't a perfect score prediction for Chelsea versus West Ham, but I do get the 2 points for a win. Bournemouth, my prediction was a 1-0 victory for Bournemouth. They won by 2 goals to 0. I do not get a perfect score. I get 2 points there, so that means that's 8 points. Pedri, I hope you're counting equally on your side of things. Arsenal, my prediction had been a 4-1 victory. Unfortunately or fortunately, depending on which way you see it, they managed to keep a clean sheet in that one. And so I do not get a perfect score prediction, but I do get the 2 points off of there. That means 10 points. And then a perfect score prediction for the 1-1 draw between Brighton and Everton. So that puts me at 13 points. Because I did not take notes, and it was the guidance that each of us participating in the game would take note of their own predictions. Pedri will let us know how many points he was able to accumulate on there from the weekend, from match day 24 of his own predictions. I do suspect that he had, I think, one perfect score because he had gone for an Everton win. That did happen. He predicted a 2-0 victory for Bournemouth. That was the perfect score. So those are the only ones I had captured at the time when we made the decision. So, Pedri, be honest to yourself and let us know what your point tally. Mine stands at 13 after game week 1 for us, which was match day 24 of the Premier League. So anyways, do let me know where you stand in your other predictions. I know for a fact that had you gone for United win? I don't recall. So, but as for one, I have accumulated 13 points from match day 1. 13 points from match day 24 for the predictions. I don't know. I don't know if Pedri is still with us to let me know. Pedri, are you still with us? Meanwhile, there's an ongoing poll on the channel for those of you that are just joining us. The question is, who do you think will advance to the Carabao finals between Chelsea and Arsenal. Arsenal are in action today against Chelsea for the second leg of the competition. Remember, the first leg ended in a 3-2 victory for the Gunners at Stamford Bridge. That was a couple of weeks ago with Victor Gyökeres, Martin Zubimendi, and who else? That was on target for the Arsenal in that game. But yeah, then Jesus Christ. So that game is continuing today, or action is continuing today when the two sides come up together. I'm trying to find out who the actual goal scorers were for that first leg. In case any of you has that off their fingertips, you can let me know down in the comment section in as far as things stand. Really? Jesus Christ. That's almost impossible. Anyways, so yeah, the two sides will have everything to play for a spot in the finals that will be played later on in March at Wembley. The other semi-final will come tomorrow when Manchester City hosts Newcastle, with Man City having a 2-0 lead, but we'll get to that game tomorrow. For now, we'll focus on the first semi-final, which involves the Gunners, who are seeking, I think, to qualify for their first Carabao Cup final since 2018. Yeah, I think since 2018, when they reached the finals and lost to Man City, I think by 3 goals to 0. That's what I do seem to recall in that regard. So it's quite I won't say telling, but it's going to be quite an interesting game that will be played at 11 p.m. East African time. Of course, I've said this before, that the Carabao Cup is the biggest opportunity Arsenal to break the jinx of having not won any major trophy or any trophy since 2020. That's the first instance. But then also to begin a winning culture, then today is the day to start. That you start very early on in the season. The Carabao Cup does present itself, or present you the opportunity to win a trophy very early on to the season, into the season, and that possibly could be what motivates you into fighting for all the other competitions that you could be involved in. So, with that said, I think Arsenal will take this game as seriously as possible, as you would have it. In any case, yes, the goal scorers for Chelsea, it was Alejandro Garnacho with the brace in that one, while Ben White was the other goal scorer for the Arsenal on the day. Arsenal had a 2-0 lead in that one, thanks to Ben White and Victor Gyökeres, while Garnacho scored to pull one back in the 57th minute, and then Martin Zubimendi made it 3-1 with Gyökeres providing the assist in that one before Garnacho responded in the 83rd minute. So for starters, it's going to be a highly contested fixture, as the first one was. Two, you do have it's a London derby. There's always a lot at stake for these two sides. And I think they will go with the best 11s that they can go with on the day in terms of knowing the importance of this game. In the first leg, we saw Chelsea fielding Robert Sanchez in goal, Joshua Achepong, Wesley Fofana, Trevor Chalobah, Marco Correa, Andre Santos playing alongside Enzo Fernandez, William Esteval, Joao Pedro, Makui, and Pedro Neto. This time around, they do have Moises Caicedo back because he was suspended for that fixture. William Esteval just returned back from injury. Cole Palmer is available. So yeah, the Rachel James will be present, so they will have a lot to choose from. Their bench at the time had Benoit Badiashile, Tosin Aderabio, Jorel Hato, Garnacho, Philippe Jorgensen, Dario Esugo, Tarek George, who has since left the club to join Everton on a season on loan until the end of the season, and Facundo Benanote. Then Arsenal did have Kepa Arrizabalaga in goal. They had Gabriel Jesus alongside William Saliba, Ben White, and Jurgen Timber at left back. They had Declan Rice, Martin Zubimendi, and Martin Odegaard starting in that one. And then they had Leandro Trossard, Victor Gyökeres, and Bukayo Saka. Now, as we speak, Pedri says he scored 11 points. I trust that you're being honest, both with us and with yourself. So that's the record that we will take. That Pedri has 11 points. Like I said, I need to keep a spreadsheet of our point study. I will not keep a spreadsheet tracking all predictions. Every one of us will be taking record of their own predictions, and then at every end of match day or match week or game period, depending on where we choose to predict, we'll continue to tally those points. So we'll have 13 points for I, and then Pedri has 11 points. I do not know, unfortunately, Africa will never unite. He's not here with us. What if I just lie about my score? Well, you will be being dishonest to us and to the rest of the community, which will be unfair. But I mean, we ought to build a certain level of trust that I think you have to take down my note. I think okay. We'll do our best. Maybe we'll find a working mechanism where everything is transparent. So unfortunately, we cannot go back to that particular broadcast and revisit what the predictions were. But yeah, excuse me. Then all right. But I'll be keeping track of those points at tallies. So back to the conversation. So Arsenal this time around come into the fixture without Bukayo Saka. This one suffered an injury during his warm-up prior to the game against Leeds United. Then they come into the game without Mikel Merino. I was seeing a story that that according to a Spanish outlet, that the fears Mikel Merino could not make it for the World Cup following that foot injury that is going to require surgery. While Arsenal communicate that he will be out for an extended period of time for the remainder of this season, there is hope or a certain school of thought that we could see Mikel Merino return to action somewhere around April. That means if he does return around that period, then clearly he will be viable for the Spanish squad going for the World Cup 2026 that will be hosted over in the United States of America, Canada, and Mexico. Speaking of the World Cup briefly, there have been rumors of European teams wanting to boycott the World Cup because of America's immigration policies. I think there's a certain feeling. Of course, the politics of President Donald Trump does not help the situation, but there's, I don't know, a feeling of uncertainty, insecurity, or a lack of trust among some of these countries. In America being the host, given their very stringent, immigration policies recently. For example, they recently updated their list, and Uganda being one of those countries where, for example, if you're getting a tourist visa, or I think a tourist visa, or I don't know how the other is called, whether it's a visiting visa, but there's a certain grade for it. You have to post literally a ransom fee. I'll call it ransom for lack of a better word, or literally a stake or a security fee, which is more like collateral or bond, whatever you may call it, of no less than £5,000. Sorry, no less than $5,000. So it could be anywhere between $5,000 to $15,000, just to guarantee that when you travel to the USA, you'll suddenly return to your country. And I was thinking to myself, how ridiculous is that? I mean, I do understand. I do understand where they're coming from in their defense. I do understand that, but I mean, if I get an invitation from a friend, from a family member over there, and I can afford my tickets, I have my papers in order based on your security reviews and stuff. What makes you think I have $15,000 lying around? What makes you think I do not even have $5,000 to my name? So, and I'm not saying I will not get it, you know, but I feel that's strange. Now, my simple proposal is for every respective country that is required to do that, let them counter with the same for American nationals that are traveling. Now, of course, it comes at a costly expense, especially for those countries, because in the American citizens, you get tourists and stuff like that. Just imagine if tourists are being told that for you to come to these countries where either you want to visit or you're coming for work or maybe, but whichever the case is, you need to post that $15,000 just to be sure, yeah, you will go back after, you know, because whereas the commonality is that people 8 times out of 10, people are more likely to travel to the US and not want to return to their respective countries, especially if you come from a poor country or a broken country, than vice versa. It is also true that some people come to these countries and then they just never go back. I've seen, I don't want to say there is an increasing trend, but I've seen a few or a couple of Europeans or Americans who have said, I've left my country and I'm going to stay in Kenya, I'm going to stay in Uganda. Usually, for some, these are with spouses. And I also had the quote unquote some information pertaining that you cannot be, you will no longer be eligible to become a citizen just because you married an American. And I'm thinking to myself, where are they going with this? Has the world or the space within the US become so small that it cannot accommodate more people? Now, every country is entitled to making their own policies that protect their environments and stuff like that. But I seem to live by this code of we are only visitors on this earth, that at one point we're going to leave. So there's no harm in trying to hang on to tight onto it, you know, on the material things of this world. So what if Pedri marries a Sandra from Ohio, from Pennsylvania, and then they decide that out of the two countries, it's the US where we're going to live as a couple, you know? What's wrong with that? Or vice versa, you know? Anyways, so countries and you know, they were saying if countries like, let's say, German, I don't think England would pull out because of their relationship with the USA. I don't know if France would, because France, I think, is USA's longest friend, but that's on the political side. You never know. Then countries like Netherlands and stuff like that, I can just imagine if you have some of the big countries from Europe, let's say teams like the UK or England, teams like German and a couple of others saying we are not going to go for the World Cup in the USA, then suddenly that would get some head stand. Let's not forget that there has been speculation that Russia wants to host the equivalent of a World Cup that includes all countries that have not qualified. There's been that speculation. And just yesterday, I was reading about comments, apparently, that FIFA wants to review their rules that when countries get sanctioned or banned, they do not get banned from football just by extension of decisions of politics in those respective countries. So in this particular case, that because Russia is at war with Ukraine, that Russia does not get banned from the World Cup just by the virtue of the fact that their political leaders have decided to take those kinds of decisions, because we know that FIFA is anti-government, quote unquote. They do not want governments interfering in football affairs of their respective member countries and things like that. So I sort of understand where Gian Infantino is coming from. But that's the law of unintended consequences. That when your country chooses to do something, um, Jesus Christ, I have a fly disturbing me around here. Anyways, that when your country decides to take a decision A and then the world penalizes it for it, they are the people that are going to suffer for it. The people that are going to be collateral damage in that sort of process, the people that are going to be that. And in this particular case, you're having national football teams become that. But anyways, we'll leave that at that. That was just a side note or a footnote in the whole grand scheme of the conversation. But going back to the semi-final, so I hope Mikel Merino makes it to the World Cup because I don't know if Pedro is still here with us, but he does know the significance of Mikel Merino to that Spanish national team squad. We know he does come up with a couple of goals that have helped the team through and through. So it's it will be quite more helpful for them to have him in their squad. So. Anyways, Arsenal failed in the attempt to try and find a quick replacement for Mikel Merino. Nonetheless, I'm not too worried, even though they are still, fighting on all fronts in the form of all competitions, the EFL Cup, the FA Cup, wanting to win the Premier League. They are still in the UEFA Champions League and things like that. So let's just wait and see. In the context of the game itself, like I've told you, for my predicted lineups, I'll go with, on the side of Chelsea, Robert Sanchez in goal, Wesley Fofana alongside Trevor Chalobah. I'll go with Richie James at right back, Marco Correa at left back, Moises Caicedo alongside Enzo Fernandez, Cole Palmer, Joao Pedro, Pedro Neto, and Alejandro Garnacho. Those would be my starters if I'm Liam Rafinha in charge of that game. On the side of Arsenal, I don't know. Kepa Arrizabalaga, I would want to give him this game. I mean, it's a cup competition. He's played in it thus far, so I wouldn't want to take him out because of. I understand the gravitas of the game, the importance of the game, but you ought to take a risk. You ought to take a bet on some of these players that are not playing week in, week out. And how often do you see a goalkeeper substitution? Almost never, or unless something bad really happens, that the other suffers an injury. So I'd keep Kepa Arrizabalaga in goal. I'd go with Gabriel Magalhaes and William Saliba. I'd go with Ricardo Carafiori at left back. I'd go with Yuan Timber. No, actually, I'd go with Ben White at right back. And rest Yuan Timber. Ricardo Carafiori, he's returned from injury, and I believe he's starting to gain that bit of fitness. He's not yet 100% there, but given that he came off the bench over the weekend, I'd start him. In that midfield, I'd go Zubimendi, I'd go Declan Rice, I'd go Martin Odegaard, I'd go Victor Gyökeres, Noni Madueke to the right, and I would accommodate Ebeleche Eze in that team. That means Jesus, Gabriel Martinelli, Leandro Trossard are all on the bench, and the likes. So that's how I would go about it, including Kai Havertz, who, by the way, came off the bench in that game. So the likes of Christian Norgard, Miles Lewis Kelly, would all be on the bench. So that's the kind of team that I would go with. It's going to be a tough battle. We know that this is going to be the third occasion of the two sides meeting, yet there's still another around first match for the return leg of the Premier League that will also be at the Emirates Stadium. Arsenal have won one and drawn the other. Arsenal do have an advantage by the virtue of the fact that they are at home. But when it comes to these cup competitions and knockouts games, which can be sort of decided by a few moments here and there, it will simply boil down to who wants it more. Who wants more? Who wants it more to go to Wembley? I do fancy Arsenal to overcome Chelsea and advance to the final, because even a draw is a result that could work for them. However, any one goal deficit margin in loss for Arsenal could send the game into extra time. Like I've made the argument before, if you want to win serious titles, and I keep making reference to to the first time Pep Guardiola came to the UK, and you remember the first competition he won was the Carabao Cup. He comes in the 2016-2017 season, he doesn't win anything. You remember Chelsea won the Premier League title that season. I do not remember who won the Carabao Cup, but his first trophy was the Carabao Cup. They beat up against Arsenal by 3-0 in the finals that were played on the 25th of February 2018. So, and goals from Sergio Aguero, Vincent Kompany, and David Silva were enough to close to Man City to victory. And I seem to recall, I think Man City beat Arsenal 3 times that season by 3-0 or even more. No, maybe twice 3-0, and then the other was it 2-1 or something. So, and we're talking about an Arsenal side that had players like David Ospina, Shkodran Mustafi, Laurent Koscielny, Cam Chambers, Granit Xhaka, Aaron Ramsey, Danny Welbeck, Alex Iwobi, Nacho Monreal, Hector Bellerin, Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang, Jack Wilshere, Mesut Ozil. That's the kind of team that you had in there. On the side of Manchester City, they had Leroy Sané, Sergio Kun Aguero, Vincent Kompany, David Silva, Kyle Walker, Claudio Bravo, Nicolas Otamendi. They had players like Danilo, Ilkay Gundogan, Fabinho, Bernardo Silva, Phil Foden was coming up at the time, Gabriel Jesus, Kevin De Bruyne. So really, a very, very strong side that won that game over there. So, and I do suspect, and this is why I want us to see another final between Man City and Arsenal at Wembley, because it will be interesting to see if Arsenal can get a one over Man City in a cup final. So that's my hope. That midfield battle, of course, is going to be to return Caicedo versus Declan Rice. The last time the two guys met, Caicedo tried to overdo it. He ended up with a red card in the fixture. I remember that game that ended 1-1 between the two sides at Stamford Bridge. So really, that's my hope and impression of it. Let's hope it all goes down well. Anyways, today in the other fixtures, there is a game in the Italian Serie A. For those of you that are interested in catching that one, Bologna will be up against AC Milan at a quarter to 11 p.m. Then Barcelona at 11 p.m. will be playing Albacete in the Copa del Rey quarterfinals. Then in the DFB Pokal quarterfinals, Bayer Leverkusen will be up against St. Pauli at a quarter to 11 p.m. Then in the Coupe de France, Reims will be up against Le Mans, while Olympique Marseille will take on Stade Rennes, with those games coming at 10:30 and at 10 minutes past 11 p.m. Respectively. In the KNVB Beker quarterfinals, AZ Alkmaar will be up against FC Twente. They are in Netherlands, and then you have some couple of games over there in the Championship when Blackburn Rovers take on Sheffield United, Hull City up against Watford, Portsmouth take on Ipswich Town, while Sheffield United will be up against Oxford United. In those respective fixtures. So do not miss out on any of that action for those of you that could be interested in getting things on there. Then tomorrow, that's Wednesday, still in the quarterfinals of the Copa del Rey, Deportivo Alaves will be up against Real Sociedad, while Valencia will take on Athletic Bilbao. Both games kicking off at 11 p.m. Then Man City against Newcastle. We'll discuss that game tomorrow. Inter Milan will be up against Torino in the Coppa Italia in the quarterfinals. Then also in the DFB Pokal, VfB Stuttgart will be up against Holstein Kiel there. And then in Coupe de France, Lorient will take on Paris FC. Lyon will take on Laval. Nice will be up against Montpellier. Toulouse will be up against Amiens. And then Troyes will be up against Lens there. So do not miss out on any of that action in as far as midweek football is concerned. Yesterday, like I told you, it was revealed that Sandro Tonali's agents tried to offer him to Arsenal. The name was floated to Andrea Bata, and he, like any other prospect, he reviewed it, but there was no contract between the two clubs, so that deal was almost impossible. Then in the Saudi Pro League, Karim Benzema made the switch from Al Ittihad to Al Hilal, where apparently Cristiano Ronaldo is on strike. Then also Jean-Philippe Mateta's move to AC Milan collapsed after he failed a medical. Then Crystal Palace signed Jürgen Strand Larsson from Wolverhampton Wanderers for a total package of £48 million. Then the agreed deal between Everton and Crystal Palace for Dwight McNeil to move for £20 million. That deal collapsed after the player had even completed his medical. Because of the collapse in the Jean-Philippe Mateta deal, Crystal Palace wanted a change of terms to a loan deal with an obligation to buy in the summer so that they could sign Dwight McNeil, but that deal did collapse. So, yeah. Those were some of the key transfer news that made the headlines yesterday. So let's wait and see in regards to how things go in the next couple of days. Otherwise, you'll allow me wrap it up here. For those of you that participated in our poll question, when we asked who do you think will win who do you think will advance to the finals of the Carabao Cup between Arsenal and Chelsea, 57% said Chelsea. Oh, Jesus Christ. I'm trying to... Yes, 57% said Chelsea, 43% said Arsenal. That's 7 votes cast there. Then, okay, I think that seals it for us on here. But do have a blessed day. Thank you so much, Pedri, for contributing to the discussion, and every single one of you that has been part of the morning broadcast ever since when we started until now. For those of you that keep dedicating your time to watch our content, those who watch our live broadcasts long after they've ended, we thank you so much. We do not take your love and support for granted. Keep watching, keep liking, keep commenting, keep sharing, keep subscribing if you're new to the community, and help us continue to grow. Otherwise, have a blessed Tuesday, and I'll see you guys tonight for that game between Chelsea away to Arsenal in the semi-final return leg of the Carabao Cup. Stay blessed, and bye-bye for now.